Wow, that was some rockin' flute music. I have never heard rockin' native flute music, and I'm happy we got some new music. You are here with us on Red Hoop Talk. My name is Shannon O'Loughlin. I'm a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma.
Halito, I'm Jennifer Robin, and welcome to Red Hoop.
I'm sorry. I think there's been some technical difficulties. You're in the right place.
Technically, I am difficult. I'm Jennifer Robin. This is Red Hoop Talk.
Halito! This is... What is
Red
it?
Hoop Talk.
Oh, so we are on Red Hoop Talk. You be a little bit confused, but not too confused. This is our new host, Jennifer Robin. She's a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of which Choctaw Nation?
Oklahoma by paper, but I got more blood quantum in Mississippi. But since I'm less than half, so I'm all the Choctaws.
All the Choctaws is Jennifer. And so, are you the jewel of the Choctaws?
I think I'm more like the basalt of the Choctaw, I might say.
Excellent. So let me introduce you. You all know me, and I hope that you're damn tired of me, because Jennifer Robin is an award-winning producer and broadcaster. She's got more than a handful of awards for program excellence and public service. She's the host of Resilience Radio on KVMR 89.5 FM. Which features authentic Indigenous voices. Go to kvmr.org to find out more about that. But Jennifer, I'm so grateful to have you as a host. You are the epitome to me of staying close to culture and doing work in Native country to change how people see who Native people are in the U.S. and beyond. I mean, you're a fourth generation seamstress, regalia maker, ribbon maker, wearer, clothing stuff. And she's even had costume design credits on some Disney show.
Yeah, like me and every other Choctaw, we had a piece of Echo. And then I've done some regalia and ribbon wear making for some films, but they weren't they weren't the best films. So I don't know if, I'm embarrassed to part of my resume, but I think most of us are. So Shannon, because I've been in broadcasting like 13 years, our first guest, if you choose to stick around, is Miko Thomas, aka Landa Lakes. And I love Miko so much because and it's hard enough to carry culture. But when people take the time to learn language and stories and present it in such a profoundly cultural appreciation way, it's magic. It does something. So I feel, and a lot of people that we're going to see I've had on KVMR over the years, but there's just something super special about Miko T. And I felt like because we're ending Pride Month, to use that as an excuse, and then maybe some peer pressure, like it's Pride Month, you have to now, to get Miko on the program. And in drag, out of drag, I am extremely always blown away by what's brought to the table. And this is difficult for me because I'm such a super fan that I had to do some weird deep breathing of play it cool, like you got this, don't, because I just want to sit there and gush and be like, I like your hair or what, so yeah. I think I got it out of me, but I think the second I see his face, I'm just going to have a few minutes of cheese.
You're going to do great, Jennifer, and really grateful that you're here with us at Red Hoop Talk, taking over and creating content that's also going to be audio podcast that you may be talking about too. But I want to invite everyone who's out there in LinkedIn, Facebook, What else? LinkedIn, Facebook, on YouTube. So please comment, say hi, let us know where you're from. And you know what I'm going to do right now, Jennifer, is I'm going to take a back seat. I'm passing things to you. Please.
I did it right.
Please.
My arms are too short.
Your arms are too short. It's here for you. It's waiting for you. I'm going to take myself down. You get ahead, get started with your show, and I'll be backstage if you need me.
Yukoke, Cheeto, Shannon. All right. Oh, okay. I'm going to bring in Miko Thomas, Landa Lakes. Welcome to the program. How shall we address you today?
Just call me Miko. Just address me as.
Now, my Chickasaw cousin, does Miko mean chief as it does in Choctaw?
It does, but it's also sort of like, chief is one thing, leader, whatever, however you want to use it. But it's also like a bit of a bland thing too, where it's like, oh, your first kid, you're gonna just call them Miko because it could be because they're Miko Oshi, which is like a little king, a little brat.
Yeah, Miko T. So my dad was the firstborn boy son, so he's Miko T. So yeah. I always crack up because I'm just surrounded by all these chiefs. So I would like to pretend that nobody knows you and that we're reaching a new corner of hearts and minds and stuff and things. So you have quite a resume of an array of titles. So why don't you introduce yourself and just kind of get us started on the who is you?
Oh, like all the title stuff?
Well, I don't know, just like the foundation.
Okay, so here, I'll sort of introduce myself like we would in Oklahoma, in saying that I'm from a very small town called Tupelo, Oklahoma. And it's a very small town. My family's last name is Thomas. So that's how most people know of the area. So I'm related to almost all Chickasaws, it feels like. So there's always some kind of like way in which you're cousins of some sort. But my dad was full blood. He was full blood Chickasaw, and my mom is white. So I grew up with like two sides of the family. I grew up with the very, very native side, and then I grew up with the with a very white side. And it was funny growing up because like my white side was like so like I love you, clingy, kissy, and all that. And then the native side was not like that at all. Yeah. Well, when you saw someone you had affection for, you shook their hands. That's how you do it, chokma. That's the way you greet and everything. But growing up in a small town and everything, when I finally started doing drag in the 80s up in Oklahoma City, then things were a little bit different. We tried to form an organization there very early on because there used to be this periodical that used to come out. It was called the Gaily Oklahoman. Because there's this guy Gaylord who owns like this periodical in Oklahoma called the Daily Oklahoman. So it was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek sort of like a play on that. And in the back there was always these ads, and one of the ads was, "Are you American Indian?" LGBT. It was just L and G back then in the 80s. They didn't really include a lot of the other acronyms. So I was a part of the GLA, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance at OU. And so me and my friend Russell, we started this organization called GIN, Gay Indian Nations. And so we created like a little contest and everything. So I guess you could say that's when I got my first title. My first title was Miss Gay Indian Nations 1986. And then we had two other people who got that title. And then I left for the military and the organization just ceased to exist.
Okay, so
it was rise and fall.
Oh, go ahead.
It was like a rise and a fall. So I went to the military after I got out of the military. Then it was in the 90s really that the two-spirit term started coming into vogue. Hadn't really heard it then. Before then, of course, being from Oklahoma and everything, you would think at the time, back in Oklahoma, one of the things that we thought when we initially saw GAI, the organization out in California, we thought, well, we're in like Indian territory. We should like really own it. We should really be it. But nowadays, California has more Native people than Oklahoma does. It's sort of like a big flip. It eventually happened. But yeah, so went to the military after I got out of the military. Then I joined this organization out here called Bates, Bay Area American Indian Two Spirits. I didn't really fall into the GAI group because by the early 90s, GAI was sort of like not having as many things as they used to. So they didn't really function so much as a regular meeting organization. And, you're always seeking like that Native community once you move out of it. You're always trying to like reconnect with it. So I eventually went to Bates, and then I became a part of Bates, and in a big way, I became like a chairperson, and I've been a part of their board for over 20 something years now. So time.
I feel like you getting your first crown in when did you say 87? How old were you? Like 12?
Well, it was 86, and I like to say I was 2.
Thank you. No, you look incredible, and we're gonna talk skincare regimens off air because I can't with you. So I don't want to skip over military. I got a lot of veterans in my family. We are one of the smallest population densities, Native Americans, but we have one of the highest enlistment percentages. Yes. So do you want to like touch on that or what branch of the military? I just want to honor and high five, but if it wasn't the best, we can so easily move on.
Sure. I was a part of the U.S. Navy, and I was a part of Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then Desert Recovery. So I was a part of those 3 campaigns, and they sort of happened almost simultaneously. It was like back to back to back, and they just like grew into each other. And but I thought like at the time I thought it was like important because everybody kept talking about how there was the possibility of war or something, and this was sort of like how you become a warrior. My father was also in the military. He was in the Army and the Air Force. I think started off in the Army and then transferred to the Air Force later on. So so I already had that military background through my father. So I just continue that tradition. Mainly, I wanted to be in the Warrior Society, and so now my tribe has really grown. Okay, all the tribes in Oklahoma have really grown over the past. Economically, we're so much better off than we've ever been. Really, I think, and so like now, the Warrior Society does a lot of things, but back then I just wanted to have that to be considered like part of the Warrior Society.
Well, the naval black outfits, what do you call them? Your suit ships, that's got three rows of ribbons all over that, right? So I'm gonna make you a thing. I'm designing for my BFF Murray, to career navalman, and I wanted to make him a ribbon shirt. So I got a black one. I got all the little ribbon. He cut the patches off his old uniform because everybody gets old and fat. And I'm gonna make you one too.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
right, with the 3 rows but add some native to it. Like you're on my to-do list sometime in the next 5 years.
I'll never be as thin as I was back when I was in the Navy. I can say that for sure. That was, I guess, my heyday. That was really nice to be so thin, but oh well.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're all going to be starving and running from something soon. So, well, you know what I mean? We bought ourselves a few weeks with our cushion here. So you leaving. So when did you end up in Bay Area in San Fran?
I ended up in San Fran in because I joined in '89. I was here sort of like there's a place here called Treasure Island that at that time was called a TPU, a temporary personnel unit. So I ended up sort of in this area. My ship was the USS Flint AE-32. So I came out here. It was stationed in Concord, California, is where it was stationed. But most of the time, it was docked either in at the Oakland Army Base, or it was docked over in Mission Bay here in San Francisco. And it went through a dry dock period as well during that time, which means basically that it just stays stationary, and all the crew goes to like a barge and lives on the barge until all the dry dock stuff is done. But after that, we were like overseas, so I got to see like a large part of the world that I don't think I would have ever thought I'd ever seen when I was back in Oklahoma. My father used to talk about like his time in Japan and everything when he was in the Air Force. So when I was in the Navy, and we ended up going to Japan as well. So we're in Japan, the Philippines, Australia, Bahrain. We were pretty much all over the place. Kuwait as well. So we were just all over the place.
Basically like the worst, most uncomfortable cruise liner, but you got to do these things.
Right. You know what's really funny is I really did enjoy my time when I was in the military. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the friendship. I also enjoyed sort of the work as well. It was lots of fun.
That is good to hear. And I'm glad you said that, because I'm from a military family. There's a lot of pride. My grandpa, between indigeneity, the First Baptist money, and his military pension and stuff, he got to have a good end of life.
Yeah.
He had resources. He was clean. He was happy. And I don't want anybody to ever feel shamed on any decision they make. And I think the military has saved a lot of our people and given a lot of people a lot of opportunity that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm glad you're not too traumatized, because I was like, oh God, is he carrying a bullet somewhere?
No. You know what? Military was relatively easy because, I had been to at different times, my family, with my family and everything, I went to Jones Academy, which is in Hartshorn, Oklahoma. And it's actually in the Chickasaw Nation. And we would, and I was there at the boarding school. So boarding school actually isn't that much different from the military, to be honest. You make your bed, you make it tight, and get up and go about the chores that you're assigned. And that's sort of how it felt.
Well, and you have a lot of big roles in your life and what you do. So I can imagine the structure, the discipline. Like I'm a very unorganized. I use the piling system. I write notes on other notes. I'm terrible, right? So I wish I had a little bit more on the ball going for me. Okay, so you, Navy, you ended up. So when you were dry docked, God, that sounds painful. When you were dry docked in the Bay Area, when you're moving, did it just start to feel home? I love the Bay. If I could afford to Bay Area, I'm an Emory girl. I'm an Oakland Hills girl, right? Like I'm all about the Bay. So did you just get that like vibe?
Oh my gosh. So let me tell you some of the story. So after you get done with a lot of your military stuff, to take care of the beginning portion, you have boot camp, and you have training, and then you get assigned to where you're going to go. I actually asked to go to New Orleans because I wanted to be in New Orleans because I thought it was closer to home, and it would be easier for my parents should we want to like see each other or something. It would be easier. So when I first came to San Francisco, I was sort of disappointed because I was like, I wanted to go to New Orleans so badly. So I ended up out here in San Francisco instead. But the thing about it was, this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I really didn't feel completely comfortable. necessarily in San Francisco at the early beginning when I was in the
Okay.
military, because I was in the military. I did not want to get kicked out. I wanted to I wanted to be a good soldier, I guess you could say. So I was very careful with my my comings and goings. And but during that time, I did find myself like a boyfriend, and so I think that kept me peaceful in some ways.
Okay. Okay. Well, you never know. Like a lot of I'm an 80s baby, so I kind of seen both ends, right? I seen where people were coming from, and I've watched where they've gone and become. So I'm mid 90s running off to the Castro for some reason being allowed in many a bars. I watched Priscilla Queen of the Desert on VHS in 1995. Immediately after, I went to the bathroom and shaved my eyebrows because I didn't know you guys covered them up and I needed room for eyeshadow. Then one day it rained on my way to work at a pager company and my eyeliner washed off my eyebrows and I had to use a Sharpie. So I've seen a lot of these periods. I take a lot for granted being in Northern California and kind of where we are now. So I'm starting to get, I didn't realize how early you came in, that you are a pivotal point of a lot of that shift over the past 20 plus years that allows many of the freedoms and that incredible welcoming vibe we get a lot of across a lot of the Bay Area. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I've been here for quite a while. I've seen a lot of changes happen and everything. And it's sort of interesting because you don't really think so much about it. But I think that when we did the first Two-Spirit powwow out here, I think that we were sort of nervous. We didn't know how many people were going to show up, how many people were going to attend, or if it was even going to be something that people would attend. So I'll tell you a little story about that. So at Bates, we had an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, with the LGBT Center, because the LGBT Center was where our office was. And for those who don't know, the LGBT Center at 1800 Market Street, Bates was one of the first organizations to community organizations to be housed there. And so I think we ended up being the last of the community organizations too, as they transitioned and repriced things, and we just couldn't afford it anymore. So we did have to leave. But during that time, we had an MOU to have 2 events each year. So we had 2 annual events, and so we used to put on different kinds of things. We had a poetry night. We had something specifically for youth. We played around with it. And so one year after I'd stepped down from the chairperson and Ruth had stepped up, there was a question, what do we want to do with those 2 spaces? And I said, I think we should have a powwow. And everybody had said no in the past, right? But Ruth was like, yes, let's do it. And I was like, oh, okay, fine, let's do it. And she had just worked at the Richmond powwow with the founder of that, Courtney. Courtney was the founder of the Richmond powwow. And she said that her and her family would come in and help. So Courtney Cummins and her family all came, and they made food for the drummers and the dancers. And we put on our first powwow, and we thought we might get like 250 people, but we ended up with over 500. And we knew then that we had to make it a bigger space. So we got a bigger space, and we just kept getting a bigger and bigger space. And now we have a space that can fit everybody. And now we get like around 5,000 people coming through. And
It's my favorite powwow of the year.
But you know, a part of that is based on just some of my experiences back in Oklahoma, because I used to go to Red Earth when it was at the Myriad Gardens in Oklahoma. And me and my friend Russell used to go, and we didn't always feel that welcome, you know, because we were a little too flamey, we were a little too queeny. And because of that, we often felt like a little shamed. They enjoyed us like later in the dark, you know, when we were like going crazy at a 49 or something. Yeah, but but the daylight, they didn't want people seeing us, I guess, or something. And so when we did the Two-Spirit powwow, we wanted to make sure that it was embracing of all people. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, they do. They come as they are, and there's no, I don't know. It feels good. It feels good there. It really, that's one of my favorites. Now, speaking of Bates, little upset with you. You had an Indigenous Peoples Day event down there, Fort Mason, but you put it during Fleet Week. So I'm stuck in a building trying to be cultural, and there's just all these things walking around in their little uniforms, like looking for trouble. So I think when, I want, can we separate them a little bit so I can have a little Fleet Week and then, right?
Well, what had happened during that time?
So many buttons to unbutton. That's all I'm going to say. Go ahead.
Right. But yeah, we try not to mix it. We try not to do it at the same time. But I think that was a one-off. That was the year that I think we did something in October.
Yeah.
And that was considered the electric powwow. And the reason was because we had to cancel because of COVID the regular powwow, and we put it all online. And so vendors couldn't come, they couldn't share, they couldn't sell their stuff. And so we wanted to make an event so that they could sell their stuff. And so we based it all around the idea of just having vendors there to sell their wares. And it just happened to be the same time as Fleet Week.
Well, I loved being there, and it was just an honor watching you perform. So speaking of COVID, these were gifted to me by Gabriel Ayala Horsehair, right? Oh. Famous guitarist. And I've been carrying them around for you for like 4 years now. This year at Bates, forgot him. Last year at Bates, forgot him. So if I don't mail these to you like today, like the earrings are fine. The bag is eroding. That's how that's where we're at with these things. So it just reminded me of merch. I struggled with COVID online powwow stuff. There, you feel that drum in your body, right? You feel it in your body. You're watching everything. There's a spontaneity on who you rub across or who comes across your path or what your deal is at powwows. There's something like cosmic to it, right? There's so, and like you said, we look for culture wherever we are. So sitting and watching people do stuff, no, I'm a go do stuff person. So I appreciate everybody trying to keep it alive, but it really was so, I don't know. I didn't do well with it. And I appreciate too, like you guys kept trying to, like you guys as in Bates, the organization, kept trying to bring things back respectfully and safely.
That was our main goal. We kept thinking about like our elders and how to keep the elders safe. And so, the very first time we had a whole digital online powwow. The second powwow that we had, we had planned it all to be like regular, but everybody had to wear masks and everything else. But then Gavin Newsom came out with like this new ruling or something about like if you're over a certain number or something, and we were just like, okay, we're gonna have to cancel everything, but we'll allow the dancers to come. Because that would keep it to the minimum. We'd allow the dancers and the drummers, so we wouldn't have any outside spectators. It would only be people who were dancing, and so we did it that way that time. But everybody had to wear masks, and then the following year we opened everything up a lot, but still you still had to have masks. And then this last year, I think, was the first year that we encouraged mask wearing, but we didn't necessarily require it.
Well, I made masks to match my skirts. So the acne the mask gave me, it also covered up.
I took the opportunity to make some ribbon masks during that time. I did some ribbon masks, and I did some patchwork too, some patchwork mask as well. and I sent them to everybody. And then there's this big thing about like the only mask you should really be wearing is like this very specific mask. And then I was like, oh well, I guess I'm gonna stop making these.
Yeah, my mom made me send you fabric. Like, I don't care what you like. I'm greedy with my fabric. I'm not sending you shit. You know what I mean? Like, this is my hoard. And my mom's like, no, you have to send her some masks. Oh, yes. All right. Here's some more. And then, yeah, my mom is like, here's some more elastic. So yeah, I sent you that box of just random stuff from my mom. So
It was
yeah,
because green is like my family color.
I know, that's why.
Yeah.
So she listened to one of like our interviews during that time, and the green came up because she likes green, and it just became this whole like 2-day ordeal of like driving to the post office and finding a box or what. And then I felt like too, and I'm like, let me have your address. It took like 2 days to get a reply because I'm pretty sure you're like, why? I don't know. Should I? So COVID changed a lot for a lot of people. Feel like we're on the other end of it. I want to delve into Bates because we are fortunate in the place we live to have organizations like this. So for those listeners elsewhere, are these type of things popping up more places, or is it still few and far in between?
Oh, like Two-Spirit powwows?
Or not the powwow, but the organization, the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirits.org.
You know, I think that organizing wise, there are more, but at the same time, some sort of disappear. You know, funding is always sort of like the thing that gets everybody. But we're about to go to Oklahoma, to Hinton, Oklahoma, coming up in November, because we're going to have the 37th annual International Two-Spirit Gathering. So organizations are doing pretty good. Bates is doing a lot of stuff. Bates this last year or so was able to hire an executive director, and with the executive director, we also hired a program manager. And so we are now very, very active. We're doing a lot of stuff, and we're creating a lot more things for people to go to and have community in. So I'm very happy with that. Unfortunately, what happened for a while was that the powwow suddenly became like the lead focus. And so a lot of the community stuff that we did in the past was sort of fading out. So with the new ED, we've been able to reinvigorate it, and now there's more people that's coming to it. But there are Two-Spirit societies all over. But the interesting thing is that after we started the Two-Spirit powwow, we've had Two-Spirit powwows pop up in other places now. They're sort of like all over. Saskatchewan just had a powwow. Before that, in Treaty 6 territory up in Edmonton, they had a Two-Spirit powwow. And so the Two-Spirit powwows, they just keep popping up in different places. I think people like the Two-Spirit powwows because it is a very welcoming environment. It asks everybody just to come and enjoy Indigenous culture more than anything else.
Well, it is fun, and it is big, and it is a lot of things, but these smaller things like language classes or art classes, or like, aren't you guys doing a storytelling event? I seen something for this weekend on Bates, but there is a benefit to these more focused and intimate gatherings.
It is, and the thing about it is, not only do we do our own events, but we also encourage our members to do other events that also happen here in the Bay Area. So people have had the opportunity to help out with the canoe journey, as well as like go out and do some plant ecology sort of stuff, going out and gathering up sort of like traditional items that is indigenous to California. And we have some great artists that come in and show people how to do things, not only from this area, but from all over Turtle Island. We had someone showing us how to do wampum beads from like the East Coast. So
Bougie.
I know there was a lot, but you know what? It's all really cool. It's all really cool, and it's something fun that people can do together. And again, it's all about community.
So Sky Duncan, I see because I'm scrolling through Bates.
Yes,
So
hoop
there's
dancing.
tomorrow in
Yes,
the Bay Area. So hoop dancing and storytelling. So I knew I seen something. You are okay. You are a little bit too modest sometimes because I'm like, don't you guys have events or storytelling stuff? And you're like, yeah, whatever. You are emceeing and performing at said storytelling event on Saturday, June 29th. I see
yeah.
you. I see you. Why are you showing up at this cultural stuff as a redhead? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's so funny because, it's true. We often make choices quite often, when you get ready to go to an Indigenous event and you're like, maybe I should pull out that ribbon skirt, or
Yeah, look, see?
maybe I should pull out that jewelry, oh my God. And I just realized what shirt I'm wearing too.
See?
We make those like little choices, but I'm always like, I like to play around with it. So I think that my name as Landa Lakes says, okay, this person is connected to indigeneity in some way, and I don't worry about the rest. And I can play a white lady really well as just being like a normal Chickasaw person.
I'm gonna set you out. We're gonna do a short documentary on you just as a Karen. I want you complaining at Starbucks. We're gonna take
Oh
you
my
to Target. We're going to Home Goods, and you're gonna have a fit everywhere. I want to see that so bad, so bad. But no, and also too, Indian country has many different shades and flavors. I got
Yeah.
some Irish in me, just didn't come out as much. So we are not bound by the brown hair, brown eyes, brown skin, right? I dig it. I'm picking it up. So I want to go to your resume right quick because didn't you have like a two-spirit, I want to say like Montana, some kind of sash you were strutting around with for a minute?
Yes. Well, I've had other titles. I was Miss Osage Hills. Which is a native title. I was like Miss Tulsa Two Spirits way back when. I created the title for Bates out here for our powwow royalty, and our first winner for that was Ken Harper, and I was Jewel of the Galaxy, which was a national pageant title. I've been Grand Duchess here in San Francisco, and then I was Miss Montana. And the funny thing about the Miss Montana is that I really didn't compete for it, because in Montana, at the Two Spirit Gathering in Montana, I usually MC it. I usually MC the talent night. So I emceed the talent night, but then at the powwow, they crowned me as Miss Montana. So it was sort of like a surprise. I was like, what? They just said they wanted to crown me because, they wanted me to represent the title. And so for that year, that's what I did is I at all the big events that we had, I would show up, I would put on the crown, and I would go out and represent.
But this isn't okay. So a lot of drag can be shtick, right? A lot of drag can be just artist interpretation. A lot of drag can just go chaos, and we love that. But I don't feel like what you do is Landa Lakes is drag. I mean, do you call it? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so much comes alive and oozes from you that I don't feel like it's a performance.
Well, I've done a lot of different styles of drag, I guess you could say. And one of the reasons why I started the Weaving Spirits Two Spirit Performance Festival is because we want to give platform for Two Spirit performers just in general that could come in and bring in whatever talents they had. So there was that. And I also don't really feel like when I go to like powwows to represent, I feel like I'm less in drag for those, meaning that I'm not there performing. I feel like I am connecting with sort of like my feminine side, and I am representing in a good way, as the most positive way that I can, as a Chickasaw person, without necessarily going too far over the top. You know, I don't have like humongous like lashes on or anything. I tone it down just a little bit, but at the same time, you know, I'm not a woman, but there I am in regalia. So yeah, so I find balance in all of it.
But I feel you as auntie. Like, I don't know, like Landa Lakes, I look to you for more like womanly guidance than I do like my own mom or whatever sometimes, you know, because so
Well,
I don't know. So is there a different term, or is it just toned down drag?
well, here's the thing. I've been a mother many times over, I guess you could say. I started the Brush Arbor Gurlz, which was the first native drag troupe here in San Francisco, like over 20 years ago. And then I started my own drag house here in San Francisco called the House of Glitter, and that will celebrate 20 years next year. So yeah, so I've been sort of mothering these drag children for
It's exhausting. We're all so exhausting.
long time. And at some point, I don't know, I crossed over to sort of like that that mother threshold into trying to help form these young people who are coming in.
So let me teach you something real quick. We all jump to you as mama auntie because you act like you have your shit together. I don't portray that I have anything together or know anything and have nothing to offer. So nobody looks up to me for a damn thing. I'm just letting you know my secret. Right. So
That's
the
smart.
more you drop the ball, the more people will just stop asking you for things. So I'm just saying, when you're ready to retire, that is my gift to you.
Just
So,
be chaotic.
so true spirit. So in the 90s, when I would go from Santa Rosa to the city, does everybody in America call San Francisco Bay Area the city, or is it just like us? Are there other places, like, do they call Houston the city? Because to me, like, the city, San Francisco, it shall always be the city. It is the city.
You know what? When back in Oklahoma, we used to just say the city when we talked about OKC.
Okay.
So yeah, the city was.
Well, that's more of a OKC has a Sacramento vibe, not like a San Francisco, the city vibe. I said it. So so in the 90s, when I would go from Santa Rosa to the city to go run amok, my Choctaw aunt from Mississippi was visiting, and she said, "Aren't there a lot of gays there? Where are you going?" And I was like, with my gays, I'm designated driver this time. So I asked her, I said, how does our culture relate to sexuality? And she literally just said, before the church, nobody cared. You just do your job. Is that because two-spirit seems new to me? I wasn't raised with a term. So what is two-spirit? And from your understanding, pre-Christian colonial contact, like, what were we able to do?
Well, you know what? It takes a lot of time and takes a lot of research to find these things out, because so much of it is sort of like brushed over, and I think that a lot of people have to be aware that on the East Coast, we were around the colonists a lot longer. So, you know, those of us who are from the Chickasaws, Choctaws, Creeks, Cherokees, we've all been exposed to the Europeans for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and we were given the term civilized, five civilized.
Yeah, right. Which means that we also embraced a lot of their culture, a lot of their Christianity, and everything. So when you go back to explorers that went up the Mississippi River before, like a lot of
DeSoto.
There's a guy named Pierre. I can't think of what his last name is.
Just like mumble something French.
I know. But in his writing, this Pierre guy, in his writing, one of the things that he mentioned while he was going up was all the people that he considered to be Berdache. He called out the
Berdache.
The Berdache, before Two-Spirit was the term for anthropology, that was a term that they would apply as Berdache.
And that's a French term? Like that's a his language term, or was that like kind of an our language term?
It's technically a what I understand it to be is it originally came out of Persia.
Oh, okay,
And,
sexy.
well, actually, it meant something like a boy toy of some sort, some kind of boy
Still
slave.
kind of sexy.
I don't know.
I mean, it's not appropriate, but I can, okay.
Yes. But as he went through, he kept seeing this practice over and over in all the tribes. And if he's seeing that along the Mississippi, he crossed both of our tribes, right? The Choctaw and the Chickasaw. So I'm pretty sure there was a presence throughout that time. Of course, we wouldn't have used the term Two-Spirit because it's new. It's a new term. It was coined in the 90s. So it's new. And, with our culture, we believe that everybody has two spirits. They have the Shalop and the Shalombish. Everybody is born with two spirits. So to say that somebody's Two-Spirit is to say that they're human. So yeah. So with that in mind, we did have people who often, I'm pretty sure, were like that. And I'll prove the point. And the proof of the point is that my great-grandfather, Robert F. Thomas, was Reverend Robert F. Thomas. He was a minister, part of the Chickasaw Charge churches. So he would go and he would preach and everything. And when he passed, he gave my father a steam trunk, which was filled with Choctaw Bibles and Choctaw hymnals, because we're Chickasaw, but Chickasaws always use Choctaw hymnals and Bibles. So we always use that for our stuff. And I was going through it one day and I came across one of his speeches that he would give. And one of the things that it had in there was he was talking about how there were some people on the Red River that were doing stomp dance. Mm-hmm. And he was criticizing them for that. And one of the things that he criticized the most was that their Miko, the leader of the stomp dance, their Miko, lived with a man as a woman.
The scandal.
Yes. And so for me, when I saw that and I read that, I thought to myself, oh my God, there's a place that I belong within our traditional culture. There has to be, because here's this guy who's keeping tradition and culture, criticized by my great-grandfather, right? Yeah. But still he was keeping it, and he was obviously living with a man as a woman. So as a wife. So I thought, oh my gosh.
But it's their term that turned it into he lays with a man like a woman. Like that. And so my dad was a Baptist preacher for a while. So I got some of that. And so and that's when my aunt said nobody cared. It felt not like a go away, we don't care about you. Nobody cared. Like you contributed. So you taught people to stop dance songs and how to dance the dances and kept the grounds clean. And he had a boyfriend, or a husband, or whatever it was. And then I was also taught in Choctaw, us women, like there really wasn't a lot of marriage pre-colonialization. Like you were with somebody, and us women were allowed to say, I'm done, get out my grass house, and then bring the next one in.
It's
so
true.
I live that way now. I'm just gonna say, it's cultural for you not to be here when I wake up.
Right? Well, there was a lot more freedom, I think, sexually amongst our tribes, because I know that, like, in the past, if you ever really look into it, the bishop forbade marriage between native folk and the French that had immigrated to the area of New Orleans and all the way up Mississippi, because the women were not proper. They were not proper. Yeah. So it wasn't until they really started embracing Christianity that that rule was taken out. But for the longest time, the Frenchmen that were in that area could not marry Choctaw women.
Yeah, we don't want none. Well, and I'm not okay. So I don't want anybody to hear this. There are a lot of Christians out there, and they're happy, and the Bible helped my grandpa a lot. So this isn't, when I say these things, I don't want anybody to hear I'm anti-Christianity. I'm just trying to show a line on where a lot of these terms and a lot of how we lived became sins, and they weren't sins for tens of thousands of years until we were told they were sins. And the Choctaw hymnals you talk about, those are the worst hymnals ever. It's not glory to God, God is great, Jesus loves everyone, high five, let's go. It's redemption, redemption, you're scum, redemption, you need God, redemption, you're not right, sinner, 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 redeem. So I found that super interesting because I found a few, I was like, oh, look, it's Choctaw hymnal. And I was like, this is terrifying. Like, these are not, you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, you know what's really funny too, but on a positive note on that is actually, you know, one of the things I think that has kept the language alive has been our churches, because they were still preaching to our people in our languages, and that's the preservation of our language. Even though like the boarding schools didn't really want us speaking the language, here it is, the churches that actually were responsible, I think, partly in keeping it somewhat alive.
Well, and you know, you talk about stop dance, that was outlawed, right?
Yes.
I think it's still barely coming back, or I think both of us have some new stomp dance grounds, specifically understanding that specific tradition was made illegal, or I don't know. And
even
I like
stickball was outlawed.
the what?
Stickball got outlawed too.
Well, I'm going to tell you, 100 boys with no shirts or shoes with aprons, like scream singing from like a half mile away, heading towards me. Like, I'm not really into sports, but like I'm lustful. Like, I bought a calendar. I bought a stickball boy calendar, and I went around trying to get it autographed. Like, I don't know. What's the Chickasaw word for hoe?
Howie.
Howie is my middle name.
Howie.
You know what? I will put that.
It comes from the word sour.
You know what, though? That still works. That still works. But the fact that you and I can have this conversation, the fact that you, a half-breed, can have a military career and live who you are now, these things are like a huge deal. We are, in a lot of cases, genocide survivors, Holocaust survivors, and these things coming back and what you carry is such a big deal to me. And hail stickball, because that's how we settled hunting disputes, right? And land territory was with sport.
Yeah, it got a little violent.
Well, I was taught Choctaw women could beat, if your man was sucking, like not doing well on the field, you could pick a switch and beat him with it to play better. Like, as a woman, it was my responsibility to get you in the game.
Right? Especially if you have stuff on the line for that win.
Which could be resources, you know, or extended hunting territories, or, you know, so I think it's cool that all wars should be handled with sport. So instead of the Olympics, like, that's how we just settle all this stuff.
Right.
Because I was taught that the loss of life, we didn't war to kill, we'd war to maim. We'd break your hand, we'd Nancy Kerrigan you. That it wasn't the intent to murder and burn villages, but to show superiority. Like, we earn this, we deserve it. I don't know how I just turned Nancy Kerrigan into a verb while we're talking about maintaining culture.
So does that make me Tanya Harding?
Yeah, because you're totally going to win, and we're threatened and we're freaked out. That will be your blonde wig when we go to Starbucks and Home Goods. Your name will be Nancy K.
Now, Now I wear different color wigs. You can see them in the background. Some of them are dark haired. I'm not always in blonde or red hair.
I know. I just like to pick on you because I can. And I think that pushing and moving the stereotypes and you just being who you are when you feel like it is exactly how it should be.
Yeah, it's really what fits the number for me a lot of times. And if I need to be a Karen in a number, I can do that.
I think we all need to be a little Karen sometimes.
But, somebody asked a little bit about my perspective on like Trixie Mattel. And Trixie Mattel is always blonde.
Yeah.
Is always blonde and is always sort of like a caricature of that doll of Barbie.
Yeah, that look she made. Yeah, that's her thing. Yeah.
And she's very, very rich now. She's probably been the most successful of all the Drag Race girls. So I say kudos for her. My only criticism of Trixie is when she did the video that said there's no one way to be indigenous. I thought, well, that's true. However, I also felt like every time she does talk about indigeneity, she immediately corresponds it with poverty, and that bothers me just a little bit. It's like, okay, yeah, many of us are poor growing up, but that doesn't define the indigenous experience.
Nope.
So that's my with Trixie.
Well, that's
I think that she's very successful.
But she never really came out publicly in a lot of spheres. Like I seen you in both. I seen you cultural and drag, and I seen you like shake all kinds of things and all kinds of stuff. Okay. So, but I haven't seen that. And I watched a little Drag Race. There's just too many seasons and too many queens to keep track of. Y'all need like baseball cards with your stats. But I never really seen Trixie and hold space for both.
Right.
So I don't consider Trixie Mattel's drag an indigenous representative of, and two. So, okay, there's no one way to be indigenous or to indigeneity. I agree, but then I don't agree because as cultural carriers, right, ceremonial folk, there is something that we can't just willy-nilly about, right? I know who I am, so I only dabble in certain spheres or only feel comfortable speaking in certain spheres.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I think that like for me growing up in Oklahoma, indigeneity was just like a part of my life. It was just like being Chickasaw was just like a part of my life. And then when I got older and I moved to San Francisco, even though I was in San Francisco, I didn't lose the part of me that was Chickasaw. It didn't transform or morph. I was still the same person. So I guess when your Chickasawness is like ingrained in you, it's there and it'll always sort of be there. Even to this day, when I do, I usually pray every morning. And when I do so in Chickasaw because that's what I emulated as a child. My grandfather did it, so I did it. And so it's just like a natural part of me more than anything else. So when I think about things back home, sometimes the things that I missed, I've found that I've been able to replicate and bring here. So every time that we have an event out here, I usually bring pashofa, which is sort of like the corn dish that we always have. So I always bring pashofa. And like I said, I think being indigenous sometimes is just a part of you and a part of your life. And so I haven't been able to separate it. And so likewise, I haven't really separated it from my drag either.
So no matter what you do, you're indigenous. I mean, that's kind of the card we've been dealt here.
Yeah.
So even though I got all catty about you being the jewel of the galaxy last night, I did translate it into Choctaw with my dictionaries that are now holding my computer up. Okay, so jewel of the galaxy, jewel, Haksobish Takali, Ima Ofi Hata Kalofa. So that is jewel of the galaxy. So Haksobish, Takali, Ima, Ofi, Hata, Kalofa. So you're a mouthful in any language, basically, is your deal. That was part nasty, and I'm going to roll with it. So being that we're on YouTubes and not bound by FCC, we can curse and it feels good, but I'm trying to stay away from sailor. I want to go back to drag. I like how we're just ping-ponging around, and this is what my brain sounds like. So when you started your drag journey in Oklahoma, yeah, I said Oklahoma. I like to rub it in like Choctaw everything. Like, you guys, we name the state. Okay. OKEH is a Choctaw word for, and so it is, right? So anytime somebody says, okay, I'm like, that's our word. But going back to drag, when you started, did you have the intent of bringing this cultural stuff into it? Or you're like, we're going out tonight. I look good. Let's roll, you know?
Not at all. Not at all. When I first started doing drag back in the 80s, I did not plan to bring any of my cultural stuff.
They were like separate.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went by the name of Autumn Westbrook when I first started. There's an artist back in Oklahoma named Summer Eastbrook. So I thought her name was fancy and I liked it. So
it's All My Children. That's total All My Children name. I'm so behind it.
So that was my name for my part in Oklahoma. It wasn't until I was here in California that I had taken a break from drag, and when I went back to drag, I wanted to have a new drag name. I didn't want to go with the old one. And at that time, I'd become a little more political in a lot of things that I do. It's not to say that I wasn't political before, but I just felt like it would be cool to have my drag persona also have a political flavor to it. So when I chose the name of Landa Lakes, it was, making fun of like the mascot on the Landa Lakes butter. So it was very tongue in cheek, but very political.
Has that change negatively affected your career? Because I think we kind of talked about it. Like, I was semi disappointed because, like, I'm gonna buy the native butter. I don't care if it's racist. I like it. So, because we still get it. Those old of us, like us olders, know what it gets. But are there some like younger kids coming up? Like, what is that?
Yeah, always. Nobody knows. Nobody knows where it comes from now. It's funny. Also, I've been in Canada as well, where people do not recognize Landa Lakes. They don't know Landa Lakes butter, so they don't know what it really refers to.
Well, I was highly disappointed because every time I'd see the butter, I thought of you. Like, your ears burn. Or in Choctaw, they say so many things about you. Your ass itches. So every time, like I was just like, oh, I love this girl, So, okay, continue. So here we are now. Okay, pause you then, because I got another rolling around in my brain question. It's interesting that you say political, and indigeneity has always been politicized, if you like it or not. And then that added layer of mascot and mascotting and mascotters. That's for a silly name and a dumb tub of not real butter. That's kind of charged. Like, I get the political chargedness of it all.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like when I think about like mascots and stuff, I always think about like back when I was a kid and we were playing this other team, and I remember that our team, we were known as the Tigers, right? So we created a banner because we were playing the Savages. And in our banner, we had like the tiger putting these native people in like a large pot. Yeah, right? Into like a large pot or something. And that image just like stuck in my head forever because I was just like, and the weirder part is that, Tupelo was always largely native. So here we were all these like primarily a native team playing like an all-white team known as the Savages.
Oh, God.
And we were making fun of them with like these native images, and I always thought that was just like the weirdest thing. But at the same time, I also look at like my dad. My dad did not mind the Redskins. And when that YMCA thing first came out with the Indian for the YMCA thing and everything, I think that for natives, a lot of time the visibility was so low that we celebrated it. We sort of celebrated all of that. And I think that in urban areas, I think were offended first. And it took us a while to have real native representation in place before we could go, okay, we need this to be over.
I didn't grow up with any representation. So San Bruno, South San Fran, for those, kindergarten, graduation, they taught us the whole group of song. We are the red men, tall and quaint, with our feathers and more paint. Pow wow, we're the men of the golden cow. Yes, we are the red men, feathers in our head men, down in the dead men. Pow wow. They taught us that. I'm the only brown kid, like super confused and trying not to cry. Like, why do I have to sing this? So when you come from a place of that and you see some dude disco dancing in a headdress, you're like, yes, this is much better. That's all I'm going to say. I have been eating weird. Like, I didn't grow up with representation on TV, so you get this nobody wants me. So I shouldn't apply to be a newscaster because nobody wants me. Right? So it's just, that's where the representation matters. And if you're seen as a native doing native things in a group of other people, like the village people, it shows that we can belong, right, outside of our reservation. So I see why it was pumped. And then Redbone just made it a little better, like made it a little bit more appropriate.
Made it real, like, for one thing. Like I always say now, like, now that Buffy St. Marie is turned out to be just Italian, and
Beverly.
And no, Buffy St. Marie. Was her real name Beverly?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, Beverly. and that crying Indian Iron Eyes Cody, I think. Iron Eyes, whatever his name is. And he was Italian too. I'm just like, oh wow, back in the 70s, all my idols were actually Italian. Who knew?
That's what my mom brought him up the other night. She's like, that guy that was crying over the garbage and all those commercials. I was like, what, was he Mexican? She's like, no, he was Italian. And I'm like, oh, it worked. Like somehow.
Yes.
So bad.
Yes. It was so hard when they did that report on Buffy. I was so sad. When I was younger, I used to say, like, he was so famous, and people who were not necessarily in the Native community didn't know who she was. I was always like, Buffy. And there's some songs that even to this day I just love.
So to me, because I play her music, everybody loves Buffy. I live in the 4th widest county in California, right? And they were all around with the Joni Mitchells or whatever, right? So they love their Buffy. And if Buffy would have came out with an I'm Italian, but I'm adopted by this tribe, we would all accept and love her because she's extremely talented and adorable and beautiful. But when the way this came out, it broke my heart. So I'll sneak in a song, but if I load that song into my playlist for that day's program, there's an ache. And so many people, she was a plateau for young artists to aspire to.
Yeah.
So to find out that your hero was faking it, we got a message. Us oldies still love Buffy music. See, so that's the thing. She's extremely talented. And I love her breakup songs like Not the Loving Kind. I want to sew you a shirt with ribbon that says Not the Loving Kind. So there's so much of Buffy
Indian
that
Cowboy,
I love.
Indian Cowboy, and Star Walker. I mean, like those were so great.
Yes. So how it came out, and then I guess I feel with a lot of that is be who you are, But if you start going for monies or grants or awards or thing, I think there needs to be some kind of system of checks and balances. But I love Buff. Man, I got pictures. We sang backstage together at like a music festival, and I was like, you guys, I met Buffy, and everybody's like, you're so cool. And I'm like, I know. So now that that's gone, I lost a chunk of street cred there with my oldies.
I know. Buffy, that was heartbreaking.
It is. But, and I wonder if she knows. We can text her. But I wonder. That's so terrible. She's gonna change her phone number tomorrow. But I just want her to know that we still love her, and she's an amazing songwriter, and her poeticism, reigns in all of our hearts. Like, you just didn't have to pretend, is my point.
Yeah. I don't know. I try to balance it out. I try to think about it, and I think that Buffy did some great things too. She gave opportunity for a lot of other Indigenous people.
Yes.
Or wait, for Indigenous people. I'm not going to say other Indigenous.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
For Indigenous people. She did. She made sure that those doors stayed open and everything. I do just wish that she had been honest, a little more honest about it.
That's all it is.
And been one of our greatest allies. That would have been great.
And been an example of how to be an ally.
Yeah.
Right. So I hear you. I dig it. I just want to know, I'm not mad. I still love you. What is it that our moms used to say? We're not angry. We're disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so disappointed. I'm like, no, not Buffy. Not Buffy.
So we got distracted off the Buff. I want to go back to, so when did Landa Lakes, so you decided to pick or sink into more of your activism phase. And so here is the birth of Landa Lakes.
Yes.
And this is when? 90s, 80s, 90s?
No, this was the very beginning of the 2000s.
Okay. I'm your biographer.
Yes. Because I took a break. I took a break from drag for a while because I was with somebody who felt like they did not want to be in the gay scene, and they did not want me in the gay scene. So I just sort of like took a break and just disappeared.
Yeah, you got gaslighted and then you were done.
Yeah, exactly. And then 2000s, I came back, and that's when it changed. And that's when I started performing here in San Francisco at like sort of like this infamous shock club, and became very well known in that. And then I started the Brush Arbor Gurlz shortly after that, because I was pretty much the only Indigenous queen at that time within our group that was performing.
Honey, 90% of the time I'm the only Indigenous queen in the room. Right? So that's all I'm saying.
But I got them all to perform, and at first, that first show that we had, people were worried that we couldn't draw a crowd because they were like, I don't know if we as Indigenous people can just draw a crowd. And so we had other people mixed in, and then as we went along, a lot of those people sort of faded out, and then it was just primarily us, the Indigenous folk. And now, like, even to this day, the Brush Arbor Gurlz continue to do our performances. We're a little more artsy now than before. So we usually show up at like the Weaving Spirits Festival. We just went to Canada, and we performed at the Talking Stick Festival there. We sometimes do very serious numbers. We just did one about boarding school, and so
it's so hard to talk about, but we need to talk about it, and it happened. Right? So my Choctaw grandma ran away from boarding school barefoot in the middle of the night and could never form a sentence to tell us what happened. So we all can only assume that her horrific nature that makes you run off in the middle of the night barefoot. So do the Arbor Brush Gurlz have a website or a Facebook or a thing? Like, if people are like, I want to see it.
We don't really, but you can always look up Weaving Spirits and you can get an idea of.
Okay, I'm trying.
It's
So-
called Weaving Spirits.
Is it a .org or a dot something, or just a socials?
WeavingSpirits.com.
Okay, so boarding school. Do we call our dresses regalia? I have an issue with that.
We do call it
Okay.
regalia.
But it's so up to your neck, down to your wrist, down to your ankles. Little house on the prairie, sticking you in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant. Where's my cornbread? So I have made a few of the regalia dresses, apron and all, diamonds and all, but I cannot put one on my body. I can't. I struggle with it. But you look amazing in the regalia. So who makes it for you? Do you sew? Did somebody teach you to sew?
Yeah, I sew myself. I do it myself. So I'm one of those people that I don't really do like a lot of measurements for it. I just sort of like start cutting, and then I go from there.
I'm really good at sewing 3 feet with no bobbin thread, and and every time I have to use the seam ripper, I feel like I have failed generations of ancestors. That's I say.
The bobbin thread running out is a thing. It's a real thing. I hate that. That's the thing that drives me crazy.
I'll keep going. I've sewn some of my straightest seams with no bobbin thread.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the straightest. So when you're in the Chickasaw dress regalia, do you feel stifled with the to the neck, to the ankle? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, does it feel colonized to you?
Well, coming from one of the 5 civilized tribes, I guess it just feels appropriate in some way. I think that when I'm dressed like that, it reminds me a little bit of the fact that we are very colonized as a tribe in itself. So when I wear something like that, it's also called a purity dress.
God.
And I think to myself, well, it's dressing like this that allowed them to get married to the French, I guess.
See, I like being Mississippi Choctaw because we fought and stayed. So I have more of the like come at me, bro, energy than I have I'm still not colonized. Let's put it that way. But I see that, yes, you are honoring the uniform of those who made an effort to further America and pretty much stay alive.
Yeah. And I mean, like, technically speaking, I think that Chickasaws and Choctaws of the past, if we wanted to like wear a traditional outfit, and I call it an outfit rather than call it a dress, is because it was primarily a skirt.
Yeah, we just covered the junk.
Yeah, it was just a skirt, and it was worn by men and women. It wasn't just it wasn't that different. Men would sometimes wear the breechcloth and so forth, and the long leggings because they went through briars. But a lot of times they also just wore the wrap-on skirt, and that was the way most people dressed. I read something once where this lady sort of rewrote some of the history in the fact that she said that Chickasaw women were more modest than the other Southeastern tribes because they wore blouses. And I'm like, blouses? I'm like, where are they getting this material to make these blouses? And how did they know that it was moral or immoral?
Because again, that's a word that was attached to the colonization. Impure, immoral, modest.
Yeah. So
I would like to do some research. Can we get your Bates.org crew like investigating it for us so I don't have to wear a freaking apron every time I go into my territory?
Well, unfortunately, that will be the look. It's funny because somebody did this painting of all the federally recognized tribes, and I was looking at it, and then they were telling me, and this is the Chickasaw and the Choctaw, and I'm like, where's the apron?
Wait, we don't have,
I'm like, I'm sorry, where's the apron?
we don't have to wear one.
There needs to be an apron on this. You can't wear a Chickasaw dress without an apron.
Girl, you can't watch me. Well, it's interesting because
But they did put the apron on the Choctaw.
God, get me out. Get me out of here. And they're beautiful. And so Chickasaw, same dress, right? But Choctaw only has the diamonds. Do you guys diamond?
We don't really diamond so much.
Because
Like
it's a pain in the ass. You guys are smarter than us.
most of the time it's like rickrack.
Yeah.
It'll be rickrack, and ribbon is really popular.
Because that's pre-colonization too, rickrack.
Rickrack. Yeah, we did. We have rickrack, and we have we do ribbons. A lot of times you'll see that my dresses are more like flower print dresses, going back to flower cloth. But a lot of the modern Chickasaw dresses are just like one solid color, often with like 3 different ribbon colors on it.
Yes. And then do you guys have districts or neighborhoods in Chickasaw territory? Like Choctaw, my dad's from Standing Pine and blah, blah, blah.
Well, usually when I introduce myself in Chickasaw, I will say that I come from the Tupelo community, because that's part of the community that I come from. And the reason that we say that and everything is because, like, when you first introduce each other and Chukma, you shake hands with somebody you just met, they want to know your family name and they want to know where they're from so they can connect all the pieces together.
Yeah, and know if they trust you or not, or if there's a long-standing feud that we should be having. So when you greet, are you saying Chukma like good?
Yeah. Good. Wait. I think that people misunderstand what that means a lot.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people think that chukma just means good. It doesn't just mean good. It also means beautiful.
Oh, snap.
So it means beautiful. It means pretty. It means fine. So when you come up and you shake hands, what you're saying is in a beautiful way. So you shake hands in a beautiful way, and then you will ask specifically chin chukma or something of that flavor to ask how they are.
Okay.
And then they could respond and they could say, achukma or chukma.
So is it, because we say chimichukma? I'm just asking because we're close. So when you shake a hand, is it chukma or achukma?
A chukma. A is like an article. So there's a difference.
So no, that's what I'm asking. Because we say chimichukma, like how are you good, kind of in Choctaw.
Yes. But I think that when you're saying chim chukma, what you're saying is the state of being good by adding that A in between there. Chukma, I believe, at least in Chickasaw, is good. And I believe it's the same in Choctaws. Chukma is good, but putting that A in there is sort of like to make the sentence work, is to say that you are in a good place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning today. And language. Okay. So there was a lot happening on the North American continent before the Spaniards and Columbus and everybody showed up. We had vast trade networks. So I'm always surprised at these words for things that kind of emerged with all of us. So not being 5 civilized tribes, but we were always doing things together. What is it? Cahokia, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was like that was our Amazon back in the day, right? You go there, you look at everybody's stuff, right? Couple times a year and you go home. So there was so much vast trade and intermingling and people running off to be with somebody else's tribe. And I don't know, art, the trade of goods to make art. Like we weren't just sitting there by the creek banging rocks together waiting to be saved.
Well, it's true. And like even the things that we do in our own like environment and everything, I find it always interesting when people talk about like things like land back and everything else. And people often think that natives didn't do anything to their environment. They just left it untouched, pristine in some ways. But there are ways to take care of your environment to encourage like the growth of things that you want to collect, the removal of things to prevent your village from burning.
Right.
You know, there are different things that you do to your surroundings to make sure that, you know, it's acceptable. So just because like natives have something, it doesn't mean that it is like untouched. It's often still cultivated in some way. It's just not everything's torn down and a building built on top of it.
Well, I heard the French trappers paid a lot of attention and learned from the indigenous people because they didn't want to deplete a resource that they could make money off every year.
Mm-hmm.
So they went, hey, they kind of had some conversations on where, how many, you know, there was an effort into maintaining that resource of pelts.
Yes.
So it's interesting stuff.
And they recently started researching some of the stuff that, you know, there's like these bent trees in Alabama and Mississippi and everything that they're starting to realize is not natural. It is things that Chickasaws and Choctaws have done to bend a tree so that they could like designate spots and places along like a trail of some sort.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So we, again, Bay Area, there's so much. The more I travel to other territories in my old and wise age, I realize how lucky we are as Bay Area natives to run freely about the cabin. Right? There really is. I mean, I still get my eyes rolled. People don't get it, but I don't know. I feel happy. I feel safe-ish here. So how can we support other Two-Spirit or LGB citizens of ours who aren't necessarily in places that have access to this kind of acceptance and love and high fives?
Well, what you can do, even though you're far removed, you're still an enrolled member, which means that you have a vote and you can change the legislation within your own tribe. You know how long it's taken for certain things to happen in Indian country that have already happened almost everywhere else is sort of crazy and ridiculous. It took the Chickasaws a long time before they accepted same-sex marriage in their constitution. They finally allowed it. But, you know, I think the two holdouts that were really happening in Oklahoma were the Creek and the Choctaw. And after next Benedict's thing, I think that they have to really address some of the homophobia that exists within their tribe. And I think that if my tribe, who is like 80% Christian, can do it, why can't the Creek and the Choctaw?
I think we're running it at 80%, but at this point now, so to me, not all Christianity is scared of everything, right? My grandpa was a preacher and he would talk to anybody anywhere. There wasn't a we're all going to die aspect. So, but it's so bizarre. Us civilized folk, we're coming on 200 years of a deep enmeshment of Christianity and the preservation of our culture, like you said, including the language preservation.
Yeah.
So, in some ways, religion and indigeneity mix with the concept of one true creator and all these things, but there's all these rules and attached and sins and behaviors and things, and women should and men should, and why don't you? There's all this other stuff in that book which kind of goes against our culture.
Yeah, but like I always say, we have sovereignty and we should execute it. We have sovereignty, we should execute it. If things don't line up to do what is good, what is the next good thing, you need to make that change. You need to make it good. Because, like, you know, when Chickasaws left from the southeastern part of the United States, they refused to leave their orphans behind.
Aww.
Because the chief at the time said, "We will not leave them. we love them, so we will bring them. And I think that when you go back and you look at histories like that, where it's like they included everybody, including the orphans, and they brought them over to Oklahoma, that that they really were not planning to leave anyone behind. So with that in mind, I think that our governments need to catch up with it and say, we don't want to leave any of our children behind either, because that's what you do when you don't include everyone.
I don't fear any difference with somebody. I have different viewpoints. My family, everybody's got different viewpoints. So there's not that fear. It's I think you're an idiot. I love you, right? But for some reason, when it comes to the two-spirit realm or gay and lesbian realm or trans realm, there is a weird, deep fear. And I don't know how to respond or sift through or work with or even educate people that are so deeply triggered by anything that doesn't fit into their existing belief system.
Well, it's hard. I mean, like, but you have to look also at the state of like medicine within our tribes too. Back in the old days of like having medicine men and everything else, those have all been like flipped over too. And you hear so much about bad medicine and witchcraft and all that stuff that it makes you a little bit afraid, right? Well, those are put out there for a reason, because they didn't really want people to be practicing the old ways anymore, and they wanted them to become Christians, right? And so likewise, when was the last time you ever heard of like a bone picker?
I am.
Yeah, when was the last time you heard of like the funeral ceremonies? You don't.
But really... I carry that, right?
Oh,
I carry that voodoo. I am a bone picker. I am preparing certain loved ones, maybe illegally, for Niwea, like, so I am aware of those things based on being with the people that remember those things, but it's still not talked about. It's still taboo. It's still not I mean, my thumbnails are super hard. I love it. It's who I am. And the funeral cry, 30 days, right? How many days? 14 days.
Yeah. See, all those things are sort of like forgotten, and they're not talked about anymore. And I think that likewise, that's probably what happened to our folks too, that we would consider now to be two-spirit, is that they sort of went the way of the old traditions. They all just sort of disappeared.
But I don't believe it disappeared. Like, I'm super convinced that there's like some scared individuals all amongst Oklahoma and Mississippi in the South that like they remember everything from their great grandparents or their grandparents. Like, I know there's people out there that like carry this medicine, this two-spirit medicine, and maybe they're just too afraid to come out because they're in a heavily religious, territory. So I want to believe it's out there, Miko. Because we're fascinating people, and over 200 years, yes, we've had amazing things, and we've kept a lot in language and hymnals, but the day-to-day, the like, that pre-colonized day-to-day shooting the shit, chit-chat, collecting whatever with your cousin. I long for that understanding.
Do you know what I've always been curious about? So have you ever heard of the Bashofa ceremony?
No.
So among the Chickasaw, we have a Bashofa ceremony. I think in Choctaw, you refer to it as Tanche Loba.
Okay.
But we have a Bashofa ceremony. And in the Bashofa ceremony, women can't cross a certain line. And then men can't cross a certain line either. But then in the middle is the Bashofa that's cooking. And I always think, well, if men can't cross the line and women can't cross the line, who's cooking the Bashofa?
Right? Like those that aren't going to claim either side.
Yeah, that's what I've always like wondered. And I've been so curious to someday, I don't know, maybe if I have time to maybe combine with people who study and find out, because it just makes it's just really curious that they have like these two like places that women have to stop here, men have to stop here, but then the Bashopa's in the middle. So who's cooking it? Who's taking care of it? Who's serving it? What's happening right there? Makes me curious.
Well, you know what? Let's get a ton of funding, and I feel a documentary coming up.
Right.
And that's what it'll be called. Like, who's cooking? Who's cooking? Well, Miko T, Landa Lakes, this is your platform and your thing too. So what did I not harass you about that you want to get out there while we are lucky enough to have this built-in awesome platform here with the Association on Native American Affairs?
Okay, well, if I think that you've covered everything, I think my biography is out there. It's all done. I think that one of the things that I would probably say that maybe people could dwell on afterwards is that if laws and rules don't work for all people, then we need to make those changes.
That's huge. Well, and I'm going to add, I don't like to get super political, but Indigenous rights are women's rights, are everybody's rights. Having my Choctaw grandma, when I became of sensual age, right? She was like, don't ever take Depo-Provera. They use it to sterilize us. So there was this not having control over their body and their choices, right? So I take that very seriously. And I feel like every human should have control over their body and access to the care needed for that body. Let's go march. What are you doing Sunday? You want to go march on something?
On Sunday, I'm doing a brunch. I'm doing a brunch with the Native American community here, the Two-Spirit community. We're doing a brunch. So
I'm part offended that like I never get any of these invites. Like nobody's ever asking me to go to brunch.
You didn't get the invite to the brunch, do you?
No.
I'm going to tell you where it is. It's at 415 Valencia Street. It is Bates' new office.
You don't want
so Bates has an office. We have an office.
Amazing. So is it like an open to the public? Like, did you just invite me to a thing everybody's invited to? Or like, am I invited?
Yeah, to come and join us. Absolutely.
It's amazing. So I want to get out. What is the best way for people to follow you? So I noticed a lot of stuff is on Bates that you don't share on your personal page. So is BAAITS on the socials like the best place to get you? Or to get the organization?
The organization, yeah, Bates. You subscribe to Bates.org and you can see what we're doing. You can see all of our flyers and things like that. So that's the best way. Also, you'll know when the powwow is, all of that. If you're looking for me, then you can find me almost anywhere under Landa Lakes.
Like on all the socials, on the Instagrams and are you TikToking? Are you native TikToking?
I am. I think that's Landa Lakes official.
Official. I'm not cool enough to be an official yet. Like, and I'm a little hurt that nobody's tried to steal my, like, nobody wants to hack me. I'm not boring. Nobody wants me. Well, I cannot express Chihulet. Like, I love you so hard. Having you here with me today on my inaugural program and learning more about the amazingness that is you, like 100% jewel of the galaxy, like forever. And I know I asked you, I'm going to ask you real quick. Does it sting losing that crown or giving up that sash year to year?
No, it doesn't.
Are you lying?
I'm not. Because like, for one thing, when I stepped down from Jewel of the Galaxy, my drag daughter stepped in and took over that place. When I was Grand Duchess, when I stepped down as Grand Duchess, a different drag daughter stepped up and took that mantle. So I feel as though sometimes I'm able to provide a doorway for other Indigenous people to come in. So that makes me pretty happy.
And
So,
nepotism is cross-cultural.
absolutely. It doesn't sting. It doesn't sting a bit. I've done that. I've had that experience, and now I moved on. As a matter of fact, I stepped off from Montana, and now my niece is the reigning MX Montana. So,
Well, that's super sweet and all, but do you get to keep anything?
yeah, I get to keep the sash. The sash usually has a date on it, so I still have the sash.
And then before I let you go, just to make sure we end on a completely useless note, from where I sit, 5, 10, 15, maybe 16, and then on the fourth row, is there another 5? How many wigs have been staring at me for the past hour and a half?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's the journalist in me / like, what am I going to borrow one of these days?
32 wigs. 32 wigs.
32?
Yeah. 32 on the wall.
Just there.
And then you can't see, but because this is my office also. So on the other side of the wall, I have bins filled with some of them have hair in it, some wigs that are unstyled that I could style if I wanted to, and just miscellaneous other stuff. Especially I have like a lot of stuff that I sew with, and on top of that I have like specific costumes and hats and beadwork.
I brush my hair like 3 times a week, and this is the first time I've worn makeup since Monday. I'm not doing the best job. Miko Thomas, aka Landa Lakes, I freaking cherish you. I'm gonna get these earrings in the mail to you. And can we please do it again?
Absolutely, anytime.
Can we
Anytime.
do stuff again?
Ready. Yes.
And if I didn't embarrass you too much, I would like to be on these email lists or text chains when it involves eating and drinking in the daytime.
Yes, that sounds great.
All right. Well, I hate to let you go, but I feel like my next questions are like, so what's your most supportive brassiere when you're wearing an apron type questions, but we'll do that. We'll do that behind the scenes.
Very
All right, Miko. I love you so hard. You're a national treasure. And I just encourage anybody out there in Internetville to just go explore bates.org. We got weavingspirits.com. We got Landa Lakes across platforms. And I don't know. I think it's Bates is a very respectful way to step in and engage.
Yes. Yeah. Come to our powwow. Or it happens the first February or the first week in February usually. So come on out to our powwow, enjoy the cultural exchange. If you want to get involved with Bates, you can also check out our website and join our email list, and then you'll get our newsletter that comes out every month too.
Yay. And then I'm just gonna request at some point, I want a Navy picture. I want to see you in your sailor suit.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's so hard to be anti-government when I get so much lust in my heart seeing all those old military like uniform photos.
Well, let me just say I look like I'm 12.
They all do. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Wow.
So when I was there for Fleet Week, but doing the electric powwow, I was looking out the window, little binoculars, like, okay, is there anything, like an eagle looking down at the lake, like, what should I go, attack? I felt so old. They all look like they were 13. And then I felt like I should wait 10 years for them to mature before I fly out of the sky, caca. So I want that picture.
Those military pictures, we take them during boot camp. So when we take them, we're all like still going through boot camp, and I don't know why we look so fresh, because we're usually exhausted from having to get up so early and then having to trek across spaces and march and everything else. So I don't know why.
Be that tired and that look that good. Maybe I should have boot camped a little bit. Well, I have to let you go. I don't want to. Like, I'm leaving Mariposa. I live by Yosemite. Oh. I'm leaving the mountains right now. I don't know what you guys are doing for dinner, but it's happening. All right, Miko, Thomas, Landa Lakes on all the platforms, Bates.org. Thank you to the Association on Indian Affairs for taking good care of me today. And we'll see you in podcast form.
Yes.
All right. Chippies la chique.
Chippies la